The hidden darkness within. Imagine a person who has always been kind, compassionate, and morally upright, someone who would never harm another soul, who stands for justice, who helps others selflessly. Now imagine that same person, over time, transforming into someone unrecognizable, capable of cruelty, deception, and even destruction. What causes this transformation? How does someone go from being good to being a monster? This is not just a philosophical question, it is a real and pressing concern. The terrifying truth is that under the right conditions, anyone, no matter how kind, just, or morally strong, can descend into something they once despised. Today, we will uncover the psychological, societal, and personal forces that shape human nature and push people toward darkness. Along the way, we will explore real-life examples, psychological experiments, and historical events that demonstrate just how fragile morality can be. But more importantly, we will also discover how to resist this descent. Because if darkness is always present, so is the light. And understanding the process is the first step in ensuring we remain on the right side of history. The slippery slope, small compromises, big consequences. No one wakes up one morning and suddenly decides to become evil. The journey into darkness is almost always a slow one, built on small choices, minor compromises, and gradual shifts in thinking. Psychologists call this the slippery slope effect. It begins with seemingly harmless actions, telling a small lie to avoid confrontation, bending the rules for a good cause, justifying minor wrongdoing in the name of necessity. But once a person crosses that first ethical boundary, the next one becomes easier to step over. Real-life example, consider the case of Bernie Madoff. He started out as a respected financier, but over time, he engaged in small unethical practices that eventually snowballed into one of the largest financial frauds in history. He did not set out to become a criminal, instead, his compromises led him down a path where he could no longer stop himself. The lesson here is that small moral compromises do not just reflect who we are, they shape who we become. The power of authority, obedience to the wrong cause. One of the most chilling psychological studies ever conducted was the Milgram experiment in the 1960s. Psychologist Stanley Milgram tested how far ordinary people would go in obeying an authority figure, even when it meant harming another person. Participants were told to administer electric shocks to another individual, who was secretly an actor and not actually being shocked. The shocking result? Most participants continued delivering what they believed were painful shocks simply because an authority figure told them to. This reveals a terrifying truth: even good people, under the right conditions, can become tools of harm. They may not act out of malice but out of duty, pressure, or fear of consequences. Historical example. The defense of Nazi officers during the Nuremberg trials often boiled down to one phrase: "I was just following orders." These were ordinary men who, under the command of authority, committed unspeakable crimes. This is why it is crucial to always question authority and understand that following orders is not always synonymous with doing the right thing. Group identity and the us versus them mentality. Humans are social creatures, and our sense of morality is often tied to the groups we belong to. When people become deeply attached to a group, whether political, religious, social, or ideological, they begin to see those outside the group as the other. This leads to dehumanization, a dangerous psychological shift that allows individuals to justify harm against others. Case study: the Rwandan genocide is a tragic example of how an us versus them mentality can lead to mass violence. Decades of propaganda convinced one ethnic group that another was less than human, ultimately leading to one of the most brutal massacres in history. We must be vigilant against any ideology or belief system that encourages us to see others as less than human. The justification of wrongdoing, the illusion of righteousness. People rarely see themselves as villains. Instead, they create narratives that allow them to believe they are still good while committing questionable acts. This is called cognitive dissonance, a psychological concept introduced by Leon Festinger. When faced with a contradiction between actions and beliefs, people often change their beliefs to justify their actions rather than admit they were wrong. Example: a government may justify mass surveillance by claiming it is for the greater good. A person who cheats on a test may convince themselves that everyone else is doing it, so it's not really wrong. But self-justification is a dangerous road. It blinds us to our moral failings and allows us to continue down a path of wrongdoing without ever realizing how far we have fallen. The role of environment, how society shapes our morality. One of the most profound forces in shaping our morality is the environment we live in. More than internal flaws or personal weaknesses, the world around us, the systems we live in, the cultures we absorb, the influences we are exposed to, determines who we become. Example: in a corrupt workplace, ethical employees may feel pressure to conform to dishonest practices. In a society that normalizes aggression, individuals may adopt violent tendencies without realizing it. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo introduced the concept of the Lucifer effect to explain how situational forces can lead ordinary people to commit extraordinary evil. His Stanford prison experiment demonstrated how even psychologically stable individuals, when placed in a certain environment, could become abusive and oppressive. The safeguards: how to prevent the descent into darkness. So, how do we prevent ourselves from becoming monsters? Awareness is the first step, but action is equally important. Here are key strategies to safeguard our morality. Self-awareness and reflection: regularly question your actions and justifications. Are you compromising your values? Are you justifying harm in subtle ways? Empathy: make an effort to see others as human beings, not as labels or adversaries. Moral courage: stand against wrongdoing, even when it is difficult. History remembers those who resisted corruption, not those who conformed to it. Challenging authority: blind obedience is dangerous. Always question orders and policies that seem unethical. Building a positive environment: surround yourself with people and influences that encourage integrity, kindness, and critical thinking. Final revelation: the line between good and evil is within us. Philosopher Alexander Solzhenitsyn once wrote, "The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being." There are no absolute monsters, just as there are no absolute saints, only people making choices, shaped by their circumstances and beliefs. So, ask yourself, who are you becoming? Are your choices leading you toward light or darkness? Because in the end, the difference between a good person and a monster is not fate, it is choice. And that choice is yours to make, every single day.